Hey family, how you doing? In the car again for another rant. Cause cause I can. Right? As long as the fact checkers approve. As long as I don't violate any community standards. Well, so I'm going to, as usual, disclose some information that may or may not be part of your repertoire. It may not be something to which you are privy. It could possibly be something you've never heard before. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'm gonna say it anyway, just in case. So, I just left. This little village in Mexico, and like you see it pretty much everywhere these days. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I just can tell you what I can see here in front of me. And it was like this sort of corralled off area, like a very large shed, a short but large shed, maybe, I don't know, seemed to be at least 150 square meters, somewhere in there, like 450 square feet, something like that. And it had the words on the outside, recycling. So this is where you bring your recyclables. I guess your plastic plastic and glass. And I remember back when I was in the UK, I think it was. Yeah, I was in the UK. This was 20, almost 24 years ago. They were already down with the UN 20 whatever agenda. And the municipalities or barrios, or I forget what we call them, like little villages, I suppose. We paid our taxes for the government to provide us with multiple bins in which to dispose of our rubbish. So we had like a black bin, that's for this is just straight up basura, it's garbage, it's whatever. And then there was another brown one for organic stuff, like composting, dry leaves, whatnot, produce, whatever, no meat or anything like that, but just brown bin stuff. And then the other one, I believe, was color blue. And that was the one we were supposed to put our recyclables in. And we were charged extra every month for, after we paid for the bins, then we had to pay extra every month in our whatever municipal taxes or whatever it was to provide the service to actually execute the recycling process. Well, I just want to point out that that I have started pondering this. It's been at least 20 years ago. was like, that doesn't make any sense. But didn't say anything. And now fast forward 24 years later, I'm here in Mexico, and it still don't make any sense. And I've actually, in the meantime, because I do seek the answers to the questions on my that I have. I have questions about the nature of the reality around me, and I just can't, like, I don't know, I have this insatiable appetite to understand and try to make some sense out of it. I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. I don't care. It's just the way it is. And so here's this big, huge storage shed on the corner here, and it says, this is where you're supposed to put your recycling. And it's closed. It's closed off. And everybody is just dumping all their plastic and glass in containers on the side of the road next to this recycling plant. Now, I'm going to point out that this was maybe, I don't know if I don't know, I might have done a video on this, or I might have slipped this information into another video about the hoax of recycling. And this is based on, off and on, just continually over the course of 24 years, seeking to learn as much about this process as I can, to include conferring with someone like a PhD type, a colleague who devoted his life to the research of plastics and how to remediate the environmental pollution that these things present. A dear brother from Italy. And he spoke to me. Now, so, look, I don't know anything about this subject per se. I mean, I ponder it, I do seek into it, but I haven't devoted my entire life to studying it, so this guy has. So guess what? I'm going to listen to what he has to say. Anyway, excuse me, my hand is getting too, I can only hold this device for too long. It's just a nasty frequency. Where do I look now? Here. So what he told me was that you, the reality of the recycling thing is that you can take almost say the harder plastic bottles. So if I'm gonna give you an example, like if you go and buy a Coca-Cola at the tienda at the store or whatever, or some sort of like Gatorade or whatever toxic shit they're selling in the plastic bottles, and you feel the plastic bottle and it's relatively firm, and like if you could squeeze it, it can move, obviously, because it's plastic, but it's not gonna, then there's this other plastic that is super crinkly. You'll see they make those little small bottles of water usually out of these crinkly ones because they're so fragile. They're very, what is that a word? Crinkly? Anyway, hang on, I'm getting ready to go turn into this little town over here. Crinkly, I think you know what I mean. That may or may not be a word, crinkly. But, they just, and they're so, much more fragile. He said, that's what my friend that has a PhD in plastics, he told me, he said, that is the end result of the one and only time that you can recycle these initial plastic bottles, and then after this crinkly form they can't be recycled anymore, and they go to the landfill. He said that's the long and short of it. Now, that's, the reality of trying to find some way to recycle and mitigate, according to contemporary thought, especially that which is regurgitated in the universities. But anyway, I digress. Anyway, and and then my friend went on to say, and the plastic lids. He said the plastic lids, as far as he could see, if I remember what he said correctly, the plastic lids cannot be recycled at all, for even once. Or perhaps they could, but it's not. I mean, even recycling the plastic bottles is not cost effective. It's not a sustainable business model. Of course it's not, because the government came up with it. So, but my friend, he said, yeah, what the way it actually works is that, they come and collect all this so-called things that the people believe are being recycled, but then they sift through it and they pull out only a small fraction. In other words, all of the clear plastic bottles, first-time use plastic bottles, clear ones, not any color to it at all. And maybe I don't know where you're at, but here in Mexico we can see them going down the street, and there are these big huge trucks with pallets and pallets of squished down plastic bottles. And let's see. And that's what gets recycled, and it only gets recycled once. And so how many recycling centers are there? You'll be surprised. That's what he told me. I don't know if it's the same. Is it now as it was when he told me this? This was like 5 years ago. He told me there's only, like, what did he say? Like, if you were to go from the north of America all the way down to, say, the south of South America, like this huge, that basically the entire Western Hemisphere almost. He said that you might find a half a dozen places where they will do this recycling. So that means, in addition to collecting all of the so-called recyclables and then bringing them to a facility or a place or a landfill or whatever, where I don't know where they do the sorting. I don't know. Where do they sort through it? Who sorts through it? I don't know. And then go through whatever process and, labor intensive, energy intensive process I can imagine to go through all this, and then squish it all down into, this sort of, how do you say, let's see if I can park here, yo. I'm gonna maneuver this extremely tight. There's a motorbike bike right behind me, and the way he's parked, he might as well be taking up enough room as a minivan. Okay, let me see if I can do this. See if I can talk and parallel park at the same time. Yes, after I do a 17-point turn. Anyway, so my friend was saying, this whole thing is, he goes, you're right, Teddy, your intuition was right. He said this whole thing is a scam. This recycling. And I had gotten into some debate about this with someone else, and I said, the only way that a business that has such a bad business model, he's like, there's no profit in it. It's just pure expense. He said the only way, I mean, he didn't say this, but I said the only way a business like that could be profitable is if it was run by the government. Well, what happens when the government says we're not going to subsidize this, or we're not going to fund this anymore, or we're not going to provide this service anymore? And that's what I said. Like, I don't know how many years ago it was. And I'm seeing it right now. Boots on the ground. There's so many things that people take for granted, and they just assume it'll always be there. Like subsidies on all kinds of things, you know. And all they got to do is pull the plug. And then you have, well, orchestrated chaos. Order out of chaos. Anyhow, that's it for today, family. I'll see you later. Ciao for now.